Since we don't have a moderator, I suppose it's my turn to report back to you from the second working group on food security. We had a very lively discussion with representations also from Brazil, China and India, animated by Mr. Tarab from OCP, who unfortunately is not here at the moment, so I'm humbly replacing him to give you some feelings about our discussion. I think one of the key issues we dealt with was, first of all, the challenge. The challenge, as you probably know, is to feed 9 billion people by 2050, to do this in a sustainable way, and above all, to do it in such a way that we actually lift the poor out of their poverty and into nutritious food. As you probably also know, there are 2 billion people today who do not have the right type of food and 1 billion who actually go hungry, but there are also 1.5 billion who are already overweight or even obese. So out of the 7 billion today, 3.5 billion indeed do have a food problem. What we see today is a period still of very high and especially volatile prices. And we spent a lot of discussion on the volatility of prices. The overall consensus was that high prices in themselves also present an opportunity. In fact, they are in part a result of decades of underinvestment in agriculture, and we are very pleased to see that agriculture and food are back on the political agenda, even to the extent that the G20 has taken this up. But the volatility of prices is an issue of concern because it is in fact a disincentive and it's very difficult to deal with for poor populations. And that is in fact one of the key issues, is how to promote sufficient market liberalization, because the general feeling is still that food should be produced there where it can best be produced. And any attempt in the past to interfere with markets, for example, through export bans, as we have seen in 2008, actually has a negative, i.e. an increasing effect on world prices. But obviously you have to do something for the poor. Now, 70% of the poor live in rural areas, and hence it is very important that developing agriculture and the whole agricultural and food industry helps actually the poor to be lifted out of poverty. So while we spent some time discussing on what can be the best solution for the urban and the rural poor in terms of income access, we felt there may be different national solutions there, but generally the lessons of the past have been that good functioning markets are the best way to deal with food availability issues. But as you know, of course, poverty and lack of access to food are the things that keep many people down. So the question, aside from price fluctuations, is really how do we best direct investment into agriculture and into increasing food production in a sustainable way. We were all convinced that it is quite possible. There are some interesting lessons to be learned, for example, from the BRIC countries, but it is actually really a matter of very careful fine-tuning. The key issue on which we were all in very strong agreement is that you need investment, long-term investment in innovation and knowledge building. It's a great issue of concern that today the best young, bright people do not go into agricultural science or food science, they go into other things, and young people, men or women, do not want to be farmers. So we are increasingly faced with a real need to improve labor productivity, and of course, given the scarcity or the relative scarcity of land and water, also of land and water productivity. And that means innovation. And innovation has been the key to Brazil's success. For example, if we look at the way that cerrados, areas that were in the past were not used or considered unusable, have been developed. Similarly, the advent of irrigation in Africa will really help to lift Africa out of its poverty. But it requires a concerted effort where fertilizers and water and seeds all need to be linked up. One issue we spent some time on was also the genetically modified organisms. The general feeling was that Europe, with its reticent attitude, is really today in the backseat. All emerging markets have embraced this technology. The key issue is to get some kind of international clearinghouse or agreement where we can share information and can share experiences. But the best breakthroughs in terms of science and technology will be probably in the combination of GMOs and the fine-tuning of fertilizers and water. So in that sense, the whole tendency was very optimistic. Nevertheless, a lot needs to be done. Other issues that have been mentioned are, for example, the reduction of waste. We use between 30 and 40%, depending on the country, of the crop that's actually on the field when it comes to that doesn't come to the consumer. Biofuels have also been discussed. It's a major bone of contention for some people. The feeling was that where it is directly competing, as in the case of maize, with food or feed, it is an issue. But the multiple use of crops such as sugarcane in Brazil, for example, really presents another issue. Again, the advances will be in technology, in the use of what we call second and third generation biofuels, where you use cellulosic materials and others that are not competing with either food or feed, or perhaps marine resources. So then again, it is an issue of innovation. I think the lessons from Brazil, India, and China in particular show us that really it is a matter of organizing the entire food production chain. The market linkages are important. We see currently large companies consolidating their activities all along the food chain, and that is an issue that needs to be watched so that we are sure that indeed the best production potential is indeed channeled into these markets. We spent a little time to discuss the experiences with cooperatives, and the feeling was that cooperatives in a new form, probably you know next year is the UN Year of Cooperatives, have a real potential. Some of the most productive groups of producers, whether it's in processing or in production, in Brazil and in other countries, are in fact led by cooperatives. So to conclude, we are very optimistic, and I hope you're glad to hear that on a Sunday morning, that we can feed the world, but we will probably need a lot more discussion on how to actually do that. And there are some serious provisos. The investment in agriculture, science and technology keeps on declining, even with the current attention to the subject. There's far more room for South-South cooperation. This is happening already, particularly in the direction of Africa, but more of that is obviously needed. And we need, finally, to do something to transition the situation of the urban poor who would suffer from increasing food prices. But food prices are probably going to increase a little bit. They were at their historical low about 10 years ago. That in itself is not a problem as long as the volatility is not exacerbated by, let's say, ill-directed government policies. I'm sure I have not done justice to everybody and not to the chair of our session, but this is the best summary I can give you at the moment. Thank you.